Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of the Harmony's edge and looked at the star charts floating in front of him. The blue and green planet called Earth grew larger on the main screen as their ship moved closer to the human solar system. This was going to be his 48th first contact mission, and he expected it to go just like all the others. The humans were a young species that had barely learned to travel between planets, and their technology was simple compared to what the Galactic Council possessed. The mission briefing had been clear and straightforward. Earth's inhabitants had developed basic space travel in the last 100 years, but they were still using primitive rocket engines and simple metal ships. Their largest vessels were cargo haulers that moved supplies between their home planet and a few small colonies on nearby worlds. Intelligence reports showed they had some mining operations in their asteroid belt and a few research stations scattered around their system, but nothing that would pose any challenge to Council forces. Kethmer approached the commander's station, carrying a datapad filled with cultural information about the humans. The tall alien had 4 arms and skin that changed color based on his mood. Right now his skin showed the calm blue patterns that meant he was confident about the upcoming mission. He had studied dozens of species during first contact operations, and humans seemed to follow the same basic patterns as most primitive civilizations. Commander, the humans appear to use verbal communication as their primary method of sharing information. Kethmer said as he handed over the datapad, "They have several different languages, but most of their space-based operations use something called English. Our translation systems should have no trouble converting their speech patterns into something we can understand." Vextar nodded and scrolled through the cultural data. Humans seemed to be a fairly typical species for this stage of development. They had wars among different groups on their planet, but they also showed signs of cooperation when faced with larger challenges. Their technology focused on practical solutions rather than elegant designs, and their ships looked crude but functional. Most importantly, they had no experience dealing with alien civilizations, which meant they would likely be amazed and overwhelmed when the Council made contact. "What about their military capabilities?" Vextar asked as he looked at images of human warships. The vessels looked like metal boxes covered in weapon systems and armor plating. They were much smaller than Council ships and appeared to rely on kinetic weapons rather than energy-based systems. Zindala turned away from her tactical station to answer the commander's question. The reptilian female was the ship's military observer, and her job was to assess any potential threats during first contact missions. Her scaled skin was a neutral gray color, which meant she was not concerned about human defensive capabilities. "The humans have approximately 200 military vessels scattered throughout their system," she reported. "Most of these are small patrol craft or defensive platforms around their major colonies. Their largest warship appears to be something called the USS Liberty, which is stationed near their moon. Based on our scans, it carries weapons equivalent to a Council training vessel and has defensive systems that would not present any significant challenge to our forces." Vextar was pleased to hear this assessment. The USS Liberty was probably the pride of the human fleet, and if it was only equivalent to a Council training ship, then integration would proceed smoothly. Most species became much more cooperative once they realized how advanced Council technology was compared to their own capabilities. The final member of the first contact team was Pixen, who handled all communication duties. The small alien looked like a cross between an insect and a plant with multiple sensory organs that could detect and translate almost any form of information exchange. Pixen had successfully established communication with every species the team had encountered, in human languages would not present any unusual difficulties. "Commander, I am ready to begin initial contact procedures whenever you give the order," Pixen said in the musical tones that all members of his species used for speech. "Human communication methods are quite simple, and I should be able to establish a clear translation." Matrix, within minutes of first contact, the Harmony's edge, continued moving toward the inner part of the human solar system, where most of their activity was concentrated. Long-range sensors showed exactly what the intelligence reports had predicted. Human ships moved in predictable patterns between their planets, and they seemed to have no awareness that an alien vessel was approaching their territory. This was another good sign, because it meant they had not developed advanced sensor technology or military detection systems. As they passed the outer planets, Vexstar reviewed the standard first contact procedures that had worked so well in the past. The Council would make initial contact with the humans' most advanced military vessel to establish communication and demonstrate superior technology. Then they would request a meeting with human political leaders to discuss integration into galactic civilization. Most species were eager to gain access to advanced technology and protection from hostile aliens, so negotiations usually proceeded quickly. The integration package that the Council offered was generous and fair. New species gained access to advanced medical technology that could extend their lifespans and cure most diseases. They received improved transportation systems that made travel between star systems fast and efficient. Their planets were protected by Council military forces, which meant they no longer had to worry about asteroid impacts or attacks from hostile species. In exchange, they agreed to follow Council laws and contribute resources to support galactic civilization. Few species had initially resisted integration, but they usually changed their minds once they understood the benefits of Council membership. Those that continued to resist were classified as hostile and dealt with according to military protocols. However, Vexstar did not expect any problems with humans, because they seemed to be a reasonable species that would appreciate the opportunity to advance beyond their current primitive state. "Commander, we are approaching the human vessel USS Liberty," announced the ship's navigation officer. "They appear to have detected our presence and are trying to communicate with us using basic radio transmissions." Vexstar smiled at this news. Radio communications were exactly what he expected from a primitive species, and it showed that humans were curious rather than immediately hostile. This was a very good sign for the success of the mission. "Pixen, please establish communication with the human vessel and let them know we come in peace," Vexstar ordered. "Follow standard first contact protocols and keep the initial conversation simple and non-threatening." Within minutes, Pixen had established a clear communication link with the USS Liberty. The main screen showed the bridge of the human ship, which looked exactly like what Council intelligence had predicted. The technology was crude but functional, and the humans appeared to be surprised, but not panicked by the alien contact. A human male appeared on the screen, wearing what looked like a military uniform. He had short brown hair and blue eyes, and spoke in calm, measured tones, despite what must have been a shocking experience. This was probably Captain Jake Morrison, according to the intelligence files that identified him as the commander of humanity's most advanced warship. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty," the human said clearly. "We welcome you to our solar system and hope this meeting will be the beginning of peaceful relations between our peoples." Vexstar was impressed by Morrison's composure and diplomatic approach. Many species were either terrified or aggressive during first contact, but this human seemed genuinely interested in establishing friendly relations. This was definitely going to be one of the easier integration missions the team had completed. Captain Jake Morrison appeared calm and professional as he spoke with the alien commander through the communication link. Vexstar was pleased to see that the human was responding, exactly as expected for a primitive species making first contact with an advanced galactic civilization. Morrison asked basic questions about where the aliens came from and seemed genuinely amazed when Vexstar explained that thousands of different species belong to the Galactic Council. "We represent a peaceful alliance of civilized worlds that spans this entire region of the galaxy," Vextar explained using simple terms that the human could easily understand. The Council exists to promote cooperation between different species and to help younger civilizations advance beyond their current limitations. Morrison nodded thoughtfully as he listened to the explanation. He asked several questions about how the Council operated and what benefits it offered to member species. These were exactly the kind of questions that primitive species always asked during first contact, and Vextar had answered them many times before. Captain Morrison, I believe your species would benefit greatly from joining our galactic community. Vextar continued. We can offer your people advanced medical technology that will eliminate most diseases and extend human lifespans significantly. We can provide transportation systems that will allow you to travel between star systems in days rather than years. Most importantly, we can offer protection from hostile aliens and natural disasters that threaten primitive worlds. The human captain appeared very interested in these offers, but also showed the cautious approach that intelligent species usually displayed during first contact. He explained that he would need to consult with Earth's governments before making any decisions about joining the Galactic Council. This was a perfectly normal response, and Vextar assured Morrison that the Council understood the importance of proper consultation with political leaders. While the diplomatic conversation continued on the main bridge, Kethner was studying human behavior patterns and cultural responses from his analysis station. The cultural specialist had observed hundreds of first contact situations, and he was looking for any unusual reactions that might indicate problems with the integration process. So far, everything seemed to be proceeding according to standard patterns. However, Kethmer did notice some interesting details about human organization and technology. Their communication systems were more sophisticated than expected for such a primitive species, and their military procedures seemed unusually well coordinated. The USS Liberty itself showed design features that suggested more advanced engineering than intelligence reports had indicated. Commander, Kethmer said quietly, so the humans could not hear. I am observing some unexpected sophistication in human technology and social organization. Their responses are more strategic than most primitive species. Displayed during first contact, Vextar glanced at the cultural analysis data, but was not concerned by these observations. Some species developed faster than others, and humans might simply be more naturally intelligent than average. As long as they remained cooperative and interested in council membership, there was no reason to worry about minor variations from expected patterns. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison was communicating with someone off-screen using hand signals and quiet voice commands. Vextar assumed he was consulting with other officers about the alien contact, but this was normal behavior for military commanders facing unprecedented situations. The important thing was that Morrison seemed genuinely interested in learning more about the Galactic Council and its benefits. On Earth, the situation was very different from what the aliens believed. Admiral Lisa Parker stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters, coordinating humanity's response to the long-awaited alien contact. Banks of monitors showed the positions of every human military vessel in the solar system and communication. Links connected her to political and military leaders around the globe. President Alan Cooper was participating in an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council, where representatives from every major nation were being briefed on the alien situation. General Robert Hayes was coordinating with military commanders throughout the system to ensure that all defensive preparations remained hidden from alien sensors. Admiral Parker reported Colonel Steve Martinez from his position at the communications console. Captain Morrison is maintaining his cover perfectly. The aliens believe he is just a normal ship captain dealing with an unexpected first contact situation. Admiral Parker nodded as she reviewed the tactical displays showing alien ship positions. The single alien vessel called Harmony's Edge was exactly where intelligence reports had predicted it would be. Everything was proceeding according to the plans that humanity had been developing for over 50 years. "Colonel, what is the status of our deep space assets?" Admiral Parker asked quietly. "Are all units in position for the next phase of operations?" Martinez checked his secure communication links with various military units scattered throughout the solar system. Most of these forces were hidden in asteroid fields or behind planetary bodies where alien sensors could not detect them. The aliens believed that the USS Liberty represented humanity's most advanced military capability, but they had no idea about the true extent of human space forces. "All units report ready status, Admiral," Martinez replied. "The USS Vengeance is maintaining communication silence at the designated coordinates. Battle Groups 7 and 12 are standing by in the outer system. Planetary defense networks are fully operational, but running in passive mode to avoid detection." Back on the Harmony's edge, Captain Morrison was asking Vexstar about the specific requirements for joining the Galactic Council. The alien commander was happy to explain the standard integration process, which involved economic cooperation, trade agreements, and acceptance of council legal authority over member worlds. The integration process is designed to be gradual and non-disruptive, Vexstar assured Morrison. "We understand that primitive species need time to adjust to galactic civilization, so we provide extensive support during the transition period. Most species find that council membership dramatically improves their quality of life within just a few generations." Morrison expressed gratitude for the council's patient approach and asked several detailed questions about how integration had worked for other species. These questions showed exactly the kind of intelligent curiosity that the council liked to see in potential new members. Vexstar was confident that humans would prove to be valuable additions to galactic civilization. Zindala continued monitoring human military activities from her tactical station, but she was not seeing anything that concerned her. The USS Liberty remained in a defensive position near Earth's moon, and other human vessels continued their normal patrol patterns. A few ships had moved to investigate the alien arrival, but this was perfectly normal behavior for any species with basic military instincts. "Commander, the humans appear to have approximately 15 vessels converging on our position," Zindala reported. "However, these are clearly observation and escort craft rather than attack vessels. Their approach patterns indicate curiosity rather than hostile intent." This news pleased Vexstar because it showed that humans were taking the alien contact seriously, but were not responding with immediate aggression. Many primitive species either tried to hide from alien contact or immediately attacked with their most powerful weapons. The measured human response suggested they were intelligent enough to recognize the benefits of peaceful cooperation. Pixen was analyzing human communication patterns and language structures to improve translation accuracy. The communications specialist had noticed that humans used several different languages, but English seemed to be the standard for military and space operations. Human speech patterns were remarkably complex for a primitive species and showed sophisticated concepts of diplomacy and negotiation. "Commander," Pixen reported, "human language systems are more advanced than expected for this level of technological development. They demonstrate complex abstract thinking and sophisticated social organization. These are positive indicators for successful integration into galactic society." After several hours of initial contact procedures, Vexstar felt confident that the mission was proceeding smoothly. Captain Morrison had agreed to arrange a formal meeting with Earth's political leaders to discuss council membership. The human had also accepted an invitation for a small diplomatic delegation to visit the Harmony's edge for preliminary negotiations. "Captain Morrison, I believe we have made excellent progress during our initial contact," Vexstar said as the communication session began to wind down. "I look forward to meeting with your political leaders and beginning the formal integration process." I am confident that humanity will find Council membership to be greatly beneficial. Morrison smiled and expressed similar optimism about future cooperation between humans and the Galactic Council. He requested a few days to coordinate with Earth's governments before the formal diplomatic meetings began. This was exactly the kind of reasonable timeline that the Council expected from responsible primitive species. As the communication link ended, Vexstar turned to his senior staff with satisfaction. 3 days after first contact, Captain, Morrison sent a message to the Harmony's Edge, inviting Commander Vexstar and a small delegation to visit Earth for formal diplomatic ceremonies. This invitation was exactly what the Council team had expected, because most primitive species wanted to showcase their world and culture to advanced aliens. Vexstar was pleased that humans were following standard first contact patterns so closely. The delegation would include Vexstar himself along with Kethmer and 2 security officers named Quindal and Rethver. This was a typical diplomatic party. SIZE that showed respect for human customs while maintaining appropriate security protocols. The security officers were mainly present to handle any unexpected situations that might arise during cultural exchanges with primitive species. However, as the days passed, Kethmer began noticing more unusual details about human behavior and technology. The cultural analyst had been studying recordings of human communications and public broadcasts to better understand their society. What he found was troubling, because it suggested that humans were more advanced than intelligence reports indicated. Commander, Kethmer said quietly during a private briefing session, I have been analyzing human social structures and technological capabilities. There are several inconsistencies with our intelligence assessments that concern me. Vexstar looked up from the diplomatic protocols he was reviewing for the Earth visit. The cultural specialist rarely expressed concerns about primitive species, so his observations deserved attention. However, Vexstar was confident that any discrepancies would be minor, variations that did not affect the overall integration plan. What kind of inconsistencies are you observing? Vexstar asked as he activated a secure display screen. Are the humans showing signs of hostility or resistance to Council membership? Kethmer activated his analysis data and showed several examples of human technology and organization that seemed more sophisticated than expected. Their communication networks covered their entire planet and connected to all their space-based facilities with remarkable efficiency. Their manufacturing capabilities appeared to be highly automated and produced goods with quality standards that rivaled some Council member species. More concerning is their military organization, Kethmer continued. Humans have integrated their defensive forces across multiple planets and space stations with coordination systems that suggest advanced strategic planning. This level of military sophistication is unusual for species at their supposed technological level. Zindala had been conducting her own analysis of human military capabilities, and she shared some of Kethmer's concerns. A tactical specialist had been monitoring human ship movements and communication patterns since the first contact began. What she observed suggested that humans had better military discipline and coordination than most primitive species displayed. Commander, the human vessel positioning has been very strategic since we arrived in their system, Zindala reported. They have maintained optimal defensive formations while appearing to conduct normal patrol operations. Their communication protocols show military efficiency that indicates extensive training and preparation. Vexstar considered these observations carefully, but he was not ready to change his assessment of the situation. Human behavior might be slightly more sophisticated than average, but they were still clearly a primitive species with limited technology and military capabilities. The USS Liberty remained their most powerful warship, and it was still only equivalent to a Council training vessel. These observations are interesting, but they do not indicate any significant threat to our mission, Vexstar concluded. Some species develop more quickly than others, and humans appear to be naturally organized and intelligent. As long as they remain cooperative and interested in Council membership, we should proceed with standard integration protocols. The cultural exchange visit to Earth was scheduled for the following day, and Vextar was looking forward to seeing human civilization firsthand. Most primitive species were eager to impress alien visitors by showing their greatest achievements and most advanced technologies. These visits usually confirmed Council assessments about species capabilities and helped identify areas where advanced technology could be most beneficial. Captain Morrison had provided detailed information about the visit schedule, which included tours of major human cities, meetings with political leaders, and demonstrations of human technology and culture. The itinerary looked very similar to what other primitive species had arranged during first contact procedures. Everything suggested that humans were following the same basic patterns as previous successful integrations. On Earth, Admiral Parker was coordinating final preparations for the alien visit with military and political leaders around the globe. The Admiral stood in the secure command center reviewing intelligence reports about the alien delegation and confirming that all security measures were in place. This visit was a critical part of humanity's long-term strategy for dealing with the Galactic Council. Admiral, all departments report ready status for Operation Welcome Wagon, reported Colonel Martinez from his communication station. Political leaders are briefed and ready to play their assigned roles. Security teams are in position, but maintaining low profiles. Tourist sites and technology demonstrations are prepared according to the specifications. Admiral Parker nodded as she reviewed the carefully planned schedule for the alien visit. Every location the aliens would see had been selected to reinforce their belief that humanity was a primitive but friendly species interested in galactic cooperation. The real military installations and advanced technology development centers would remain completely hidden from alien observation. Colonel, what is the status of our deep space monitoring networks? Admiral Parker asked. Are we maintaining surveillance on alien activities throughout the system? Martinez checked his secure displays, showing data from hidden sensor networks positioned throughout the solar system. These monitoring systems had been tracking the alien ship since it arrived, and they were also watching for any additional alien vessels that might be approaching Earth. All sensor networks report normal status, Admiral, Martinez replied. The alien ship Harmony's Edge remains in its original position, and we have detected no additional alien vessels entering our system. Long-range scans show no signs of alien military forces moving toward Earth. This information was exactly what Admiral Parker wanted to hear, because it meant the aliens were still following their standard first contact procedures. According to intelligence reports, the Galactic Council usually sent a larger fleet for the second phase of integration operations. When that fleet arrived, humanity would be ready to reveal its true capabilities. The next morning, Commander Vextar and his delegation used a small shuttlecraft to travel from the Harmony's Edge to Earth's surface. The shuttle bay of the alien ship was impressive by human standards, but Captain Morrison maintained his role as an amazed primitive who was seeing advanced technology for the first time. He expressed wonder at the alien transportation systems and asked basic questions about how their technology worked. The flight to Earth took several hours and gave the alien delegation time to observe human space traffic and orbital installations. Everything they saw confirmed their assessment that humans were a young species with basic technology. Human space stations looked crude but functional, and their orbital traffic patterns showed simple transportation needs rather than complex military operations. When the alien shuttle landed at the designated facility near United Nations headquarters in New York, the delegation was met by President Cooper and other world leaders. The human politicians played their roles perfectly by expressing honor and excitement about meeting representatives of an advanced galactic civilization. They asked respectful questions about council membership and seemed genuinely grateful for the opportunity to join. Galactic Society. The tour of human facilities began with visits to major cities where the aliens could observe human culture and social organization. New York, London, Tokyo, and other metropolitan areas showcased humanity's achievements in architecture, transportation, and communication systems. Everything was impressive for a primitive species, but clearly inferior to what galactic civilization could provide. Kethmer continued studying human behavior during these visits, and he noticed more subtle signs of advanced organization. Human social systems showed remarkable efficiency, and their cultural expressions demonstrated sophisticated, abstract thinking. However, Vextar attributed these observations to natural human intelligence rather than hidden technological capabilities. The technology demonstrations were particularly interesting because humans showed off their most advanced publicly available systems. They displayed spacecraft propulsion systems, computer networks, medical equipment, and manufacturing processes. All of these technologies were impressive for a young species, but they were clearly primitive compared to council standards. During a private moment, President Cooper received a brief communication through a concealed earpiece. The message was simple but important for the success of humanity's long-term strategy. Admiral Parker was reporting that all preparations were proceeding on schedule, and that the next phase of operations would begin as soon as the alien delegation returned to their ship. Commander Vextar returned to the Harmony's edge feeling confident about the success of the integration mission. The visit to Earth had confirmed his assessment that humans were a cooperative and intelligent species that would adapt well to galactic civilization. President Cooper and other human leaders had expressed genuine enthusiasm about joining the Galactic Council, and they seemed eager to begin the formal integration process. The next phase of the operation required a larger council fleet to arrive and begin what they called integration ceremonies. This was standard procedure for bringing primitive species into galactic civilization, and it involved establishing council authority over key locations throughout the human solar system. Most species understood that this process was necessary for their protection and advancement. Vextar sent a secure communication to Council headquarters, requesting the deployment of Integration Fleet 7 to complete the human integration process. The message included his positive assessment of human cooperation and his recommendation that the integration proceed according to standard protocols. He estimated that the entire process would be completed within 60 standard cycles. Integration. Fleet 7 consisted of 12 vessels, including battle cruiser support ships and civilian integration specialists. The fleet commander was Admiral Colbith, who had successfully completed 23 integration operations during her career. The fleet was more than capable of handling any resistance from primitive species, though none was expected from the cooperative humans. Captain Morrison maintained his role as an impressed primitive leader when Vextar informed him about the arrival of additional council ships. Morrison expressed some concern about the size of the fleet, but accepted Vextar's explanation that these were standard procedures designed to help with the transition to galactic civilization. The human captain agreed to coordinate with Council forces for integration ceremonies at various locations throughout the solar system. 3 days later, Integration Fleet 7 dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. Admiral Colbith immediately established communication with the Harmony's Edge to receive briefing information about human capabilities and cooperation levels. Vextar reported that humans were following expected patterns and that integration should proceed smoothly. Admiral, the humans have been very cooperative during initial contact procedures, Vextar reported during the secure fleet communication briefing. Their technology is primitive but functional, and their military forces appear to be limited to basic defensive capabilities. I recommend proceeding with standard integration protocols, without any special security measures. Admiral Colbeth was pleased to hear this assessment because cooperative integrations were much more efficient than those involving resistant species. The fleet began moving toward the inner solar system where they would establish council authority over human space installations and begin the formal integration process. However, as the council fleet moved deeper into the human solar system long-range sensors began detecting unusual readings from the outer system. Navigation Officer VSC Carr reported that a large object was approaching on an intercept course with the fleet. Initial sensor readings suggested it might be an asteroid or some kind of primitive human generation ship. Admiral, we are detecting a large object approaching from the outer system, Zektar reported from his navigation station. The object appears to be approximately 2 kilometers in length and is moving under controlled propulsion. Its trajectory suggests an intentional intercept course rather than natural movement. Admiral Colbeth was not immediately concerned because primitive species sometimes launched large vessels to observe alien arrivals. However, she ordered detailed sensor scans of the approaching object to determine its exact nature and capabilities. What the sensors revealed was completely unexpected and deeply troubling. The approaching object was not an asteroid or a primitive generation ship. It was a warship of unknown design that displayed technology far more advanced than anything humans were supposed to possess. The vessel's hull was covered with weapon systems and defensive arrays that appeared to be at least equal to Council military standards. Zindala on the Harmony's edge was among the first to realize the true nature of the approaching vessel. Her tactical systems provided detailed analysis of the ship's capabilities, and the results sent shock waves through her scaled body. This was not the primitive human technology that intelligence reports had described. Commander, Zindala said urgently as she reviewed the sensor data. The approaching vessel displays military capabilities far beyond what we assessed for human technology. Its weapon systems appear to be energy-based rather than kinetic, and its defensive shielding shows power levels equivalent to Council battle. Cruisers, Vex Star, stared at the tactical displays in disbelief as more information about the mysterious vessel became available. The ship was definitely of human origin, but its technology was impossibly advanced for a species that had supposedly just achieved basic interplanetary travel. Something was very wrong with their intelligence about human capabilities. Captain Morrison's behavior suddenly changed as the massive human warship approached the Council fleet. His nervous deference and primitive amazement disappeared completely and was replaced by calm military professionalism. The human captain opened a communication channel to the entire Council fleet with a message that sent chills through every alien observer. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty," Morrison said in clear, authoritative tones. "You are ordered to withdraw from human space immediately. This is your only warning before we take defensive action to protect our territory." The transformation in Morrison's demeanor was shocking to Vex Star, who had believed the human was genuinely impressed by alien technology and grateful for Council offers of membership. Instead, Morrison was speaking like an experienced military commander who was completely confident about his ability to back up his demands with force. Admiral Colbeth attempted to re-establish control of the situation by demanding an explanation for human behavior. She reminded Morrison that the Council fleet was present for peaceful integration ceremonies, and that any hostile actions would be considered acts of war against galactic civilization. However, Morrison's response made it clear that humans understood exactly what they were facing. "Admiral, your so-called integration ceremonies are conquest operations disguised as diplomatic missions," Morrison replied calmly. "We know about your previous 47 successful integrations and what really happened to those species. Humanity rejects your authority and will defend itself against any attempt at forced integration." As Morrison spoke, additional human vessels began appearing throughout the solar system. These ships had been hidden in asteroid fields behind planetary bodies and within sensor shadows where Council forces could not detect them. Each vessel displayed the same advanced technology as the massive warship that was now positioning itself directly in front of the Council fleet. Zindala's tactical analysis revealed the true extent of human military capabilities, and the information was terrifying. The human fleet consisted of vessels with technology that matched or exceeded Council standards. Their weapon systems were unknown designs that appeared to be highly effective, and their strategic positioning showed military doctrine far beyond what primitive species should possess. Admiral Zindala reported with growing alarm. Human forces have achieved tactical superiority over our fleet. They have positioned vessels to control all major escape routes, and their combined firepower exceeds our defensive capabilities. We are completely surrounded and outgunned. The largest human warship identified itself as the USS Vengeance, and its commander, Admiral Lisa Parker, addressed the Council fleet directly. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had planned for this moment for many years and was completely prepared to follow through on human threats. I am Admiral Parker, commanding officer of humanity's Deep Space Defense Force, she announced. Your intelligence about human capabilities was deliberately provided to you through compromised communication channels. We have been monitoring Council activities for over 50 years, and we know exactly what your integration process really involves. Admiral Parker continued her explanation by providing details about Council military operations that shocked the alien commanders. Humans had intercepted Council communications, captured scout vessels, and analyzed the remains of previous integration targets. They knew about Council military bases' troop movements and weaknesses in territorial defenses. The age of easy conquests, disguised as first contact operations, is over, Admiral Parker concluded. Humanity claims its independence and will defend any other species that seeks freedom from Council domination. You have 1 hour to withdraw your forces from our territory. Vextar realized with growing horror that everything they thought they knew about humanity was completely wrong. The primitive species they had planned to integrate was actually a sophisticated military power that had been preparing for this confrontation for decades. The Council fleet was trapped in human space, surrounded by superior forces with no hope of victory or escape. Admiral Colbeth faced an impossible decision as the human deadline approached. Dr. Lisa Carter rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the strange patterns dancing across her computer screen. She had been working at the Deep Space Communication Array on Luna Station for 12 years, and she had never seen anything like this before. The signal was weak and broken, coming from somewhere far beyond their solar system. Most of her colleagues would have dismissed it as random space noise, but Lisa knew better. This was not natural. The year was 2157, and humanity had just started building their first homes on planets around other stars. They were still new to space travel compared to what they imagined other civilizations might be like. Earth had sent out many signals hoping to find other intelligent life, but they had never received a real answer back. Until now, Lisa called Commander Jake Phillips to her workstation. Jake was a tall man with gray hair who had spent most of his life studying codes and secret messages. He looked at the data streaming across Lisa's monitors and frowned. The signal was definitely artificial, but it was unlike any human technology they knew. How long have you been tracking this? Jake asked as he pulled up a chair next to Lisa. 3 days now. It comes in bursts every 6 hours and 43 minutes. The pattern is too regular to be natural, but the content is completely scrambled. I think someone is trying to send us a message, but I cannot figure out what they are saying. Jake studied the wavelengths and frequencies. His team had broken enemy codes during the Mars colony wars, but this was different. This was not human. Have you tried running it through the xenolinguistic protocols we developed for first contact scenarios? Lisa nodded. That was the first. Thing I did. The computer keeps telling me there are mathematical structures hidden in the signal, but it cannot translate them into anything meaningful. I think we need more processing power and maybe some fresh ideas. Within hours, Jake had assembled a team of the best code breakers and language experts on Luna Station. They worked in shifts around the clock, feeding the alien signal through every translation program and pattern recognition system they had. Dr. Paul Green, a mathematician who specialized in prime number sequences, noticed something interesting. On the fourth day, "Look at this," Paul said, pointing to a series of number patterns he had isolated from the signal. "These are not random. They follow mathematical rules that are universal. Any intelligent species would recognize these patterns, regardless of what language they speak." Lisa felt her heart racing. You think they are using mathematics as a foundation for communication? Exactly. Just like we planned to do if we ever made contact with aliens. They are starting with simple math concepts that any advanced civilization would understand and building more complex ideas on top of that foundation. The breakthrough came on day 7. Dr. Amy Stone, a xenobiologist who had joined the team to help understand how alien minds might work, suggested they think about the signal as a desperate cry for help rather than a formal greeting. This changed everything. What if they are not trying to have a polite conversation? Amy said. What if they are screaming for someone to save them? Lisa reprogrammed their translation algorithms to look for distress patterns instead of diplomatic language. Almost immediately, fragments of meaning began to emerge from the chaos. Words like danger, dying, help, and please appeared in the translated text. The aliens were indeed calling for rescue. Captain Ben Rodriguez arrived on Luna Station 2 weeks after the first signal was detected. Ben was a career military officer who had commanded exploration ships throughout the outer colonies. He was known for making quick decisions and taking calculated risks. When he read the preliminary translation reports, he knew this was the most important moment in human history. The translation team had made incredible progress. They now understood that the signal was coming from a species that called themselves the Zelani. The Zelani lived in a star system about 47 light years from Earth. They were asking for help from any civilization that might hear their message. According to the translated portions of their signal, the Zelani were being destroyed by something they called the harvesters. These harvesters seemed to be machines that were eating everything on the Zelani homeworld. The aliens said they had created these machines long ago, but something had gone wrong. Now the machines would not stop consuming everything in their path. They sent this message to 12 different star systems, Lisa explained to Captain Rodriguez. They are broadcasting it in all directions, hoping someone will hear them and come to help. Ben studied the star charts, showing the location of the Zelani system. It was far away, but not impossible to reach with their newest hyperspace technology. How long would it take us to get there? About 6 months with our fastest ship, Ben's navigation officer replied. But sir, we do not know what we would find when we arrive. These harvesters sound extremely dangerous. Ben looked around the room at the scientists who had worked so hard to decode the alien message. These people had just achieved something humans had dreamed about for centuries. They had made contact with another intelligent species. But that species was dying, and they were asking for help. Have any other civilizations responded to their signal? Ben asked. Lisa shook her head. We have been monitoring all the systems they mentioned in their broadcast. There has been no response from anyone. We might be the only ones who heard them, or at least the only ones who cared enough to try translating their message. The decision to help the Zelani was not easy. When Captain Rodriguez presented the situation to the Earth Defense Council, many politicians argued that humanity should not get involved in an alien war. They said it was too dangerous, and that Earth should focus on protecting itself rather than traveling across the galaxy to help strangers. But Dr. Lisa Carter testified before the council about what she had learned from the Zelani signal. These were not warriors or conquerors. They were peaceful beings who had accidentally created something that was now destroying them. They had reached out across the vast emptiness of space, hoping someone would care enough to help. "This is our chance to show what humanity stands for," Lisa told the council members. "We can be the species that answers when others call for help. We can be the ones who refuse to let innocent beings die when we have the power to try saving them." Commander Jake Phillips also spoke to the council. He explained that the harvesters described in the Zelani signal could eventually become a threat to Earth as well. If these machines continued growing and spreading, they might eventually reach human space. Helping the Zelani now could prevent a much larger disaster later. The vote was close, but the council agreed to authorize a rescue mission. Captain Rodriguez was given command of the exploration vessel New Horizons, humanity's most advanced starship. His crew would include scientists, diplomats, and military specialists. Their mission was to travel to the Zelani system, make formal first contact, and assess whether humanity could help stop the Harvester's dot as the New Horizons prepared for departure. Dr. Lisa Carter stood in the observation deck looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien species was waiting for someone to answer their call for help. They had no idea that a young civilization from a small planet called Earth had heard their message and was coming to their aid. The ship's engines powered up, and Lisa felt the familiar sensation of entering hyperspace. Humanity was about to take its first steps onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors or explorers, but as rescuers. They were going to show the universe that when someone cried out for help, humans would answer that call.